I'm Emma Yang, I'm 14 years old. I code and make apps to empower people with Alzheimer's, and this is why you should listen to me.
You're working on something that humanity wants, which is the ability to hold on to memories with our loved ones.
Yeah, I mean, Timeless is all about, empowering patients, empowering family members to, stay connected with their loved ones, even through as, the disease progresses, to be able to, stay connected, to retain those memories and sustain those relationships. Today, my dad put me in front of a computer and showed me Scratch, which is where you can drag and drop different blocks of code to make a program. And I instantly fell in love with it, and I was coding within hours. I was amazed by the extraordinary range of things you could do with a couple blocks of code. It didn't matter whether it was an application, a game, or tool, whether it was simple or complex. It was my own personal creation that was unique and special and that I could share with the rest of the world. This is what motivated me to progress through building websites, mobile apps, and more. Then in the summer of 2015, when I was around 11 years old, I participated in something called the Technovation Challenge, which is a girls' entrepreneurship technology competition that encourages girls to pursue STEM. I developed an app called Concussion Checker, which is an easy way for people to evaluate head injuries with the possibility of concussion. Developing this app and the company business plan for the competition was my springboard into a whole different level of technology, using tech to help my community and solve real-world problems. I realized that even though I was 11 years old and a middle school student, I could create apps, products that had meaningful functionalities to impact and benefit people from around the world. We got to the finals, we went to San Francisco and won second place globally. Even though receiving the award was really amazing, it was the discovery of a whole community of girls and women who had groundbreaking ideas that could change the world that I cherished the most. It changed my entire perspective. This is my grandma. When I was around 7 or 8 years old, she forgot my birthday, but we thought she was just being a little forgetful. But then she forgot how old I was, what she had just had for dinner, how to turn the TV. She lost track of time and so much more. Some of the common difficulties faced by Alzheimer's patients. My grandma is not alone. There are 50 million people worldwide who suffer from Alzheimer's. By 2050, that number is expected to rise to 130 million. Prevalence is on the rise, but there is no cure. Like my grandmother, people who have Alzheimer's often have difficulty remembering events, taking in new information, recognizing people and places, and separating fact from fiction. So as the disease progressed, we would set up visual aids around my grandma's house to help her remember. We continued to send her photos of us in hopes that she would remember us for as long as possible. So what you see here on the right is a picture of the whiteboard that we put in my grandma's living room, where you have on the top is my dad's phone number, in the middle is the phone number of the person she needs to visit, as well as the address, and on the bottom it says Sunday in Chinese, which is the day this was taken on. On the left, you have the iPad that she uses to look at the photos that we sent her. And so as time went by, I started to wonder whether there was a simple mobile app that could help my grandmother and other Alzheimer's patients or dementia patients to remember events, stay engaged with friends and family, and to recognize the people around them, in the same way that all of the things we set up for her would help her remember. Timeless is a first-of-its-kind, caregiver-assisted simple app for Alzheimer's patients to help them remember events, stay connected and engaged with friends and family, and to help them recognize the people around them using artificial intelligence-based facial recognition technology. It addresses all of the challenge faced by Alzheimer's patients in one single tool. So there are 4 phase 1 core features. For updates, helps patients stay engaged with loved ones by showing a stream of photos sent by friends and family through Timeless. Each of the photos are tagged with the names and relationships of the people to help the patient stimulate their memory. Today is simplified daily information and events to help the patient manage their daily lives. Contacts is a picture phone book that helps patients to contact their friends and family by simply tapping on call or text without having to remember any phone numbers. And then finally, identify is where the patient can use the phone's camera to take a picture of someone's face, whether that's in real life or an actual physical photo, and Timeless will use the facial recognition to tell them who that is. So let me show you a quick demo of the app. Users can sign into Timeless using Touch ID or Face ID. Passwords are not needed. Once the patient logs in, Timeless brings them to the home screen. There are 5 main features. I'll take you through each one of them, starting with Updates. Updates is a feed of photos sent by friends and family. Each of the photos is tagged with the names of the people in the photos by facial recognition. Next is Today, which is a daily overview including the date, weather, and the next event of the day. This helps the patient remember activities and appointments. Photos shows pictures sent by friends and family. The photos are grouped by person by facial recognition to help the patient refresh their memory and recognize friends by letting them look at photos regularly. Contacts helps patients who have difficulty remembering phone numbers and other contact information. The patient can simply tap on call or text to contact someone. Timeless will also remind the patient if the same person has been called less than 5 minutes ago. Identify is the key feature of the app. Patients often can have difficulty recognizing the people around them. With Identify, the patient can take a picture of the person, and Timeless will use facial recognition to recognize them. But research also suggests that language and mobile usage could help to predict if someone showed signs of Alzheimer's. So that brings us to one of my long-term goals for Timeless, which is whether we can use Timeless as a research platform to collect data on mobile usage. So by monitoring and tracking a non-Alzheimer's patient and an Alzheimer's patient's activities, navigation, eye movements, and etc., we can actually maybe find signs of Alzheimer's, or we could use machine learning algorithms to detect Alzheimer's disease earlier. The possibilities are endless. Also, at my school, I've founded the coding club in the middle school to encourage girls to get into STEM and to code. It's my small contribution to STEM advocacy for girls.
Hi, I'm Tanzeem Choudhury. I'm a professor at Cornell Tech, and I work on technology, particularly mobile technology for health. I'd love to know a little bit about you.
Yeah, my name is Emma Yang. I'm a senior based in New York City. I'm also the founder of Timeless. Timeless is an app that uses artificial intelligence-based facial recognition technology to help empower Alzheimer's patients, their caregivers, and their loved ones in their daily lives.
Great. So Emma, I'd like to learn a little bit more about Timeless. Tell me how it works and how it uses the technology to help patients with Alzheimer's.
Sure. So Timeless is a mobile app that's designed with all members of kind of the Alzheimer's circle in mind. So not only the patient, but also the caregiver and the loved ones. And the main feature of Timeless is that family and friends can send photos to the patient, and Timeless's facial recognition technology will tag each face in the photo so that the patient can look through and can scroll through these photos, stay updated with friends and family, but then also can be reminded of what everyone looks like and who everyone is in the photo. So it really helps to jog their memories and to help them stay connected with loved ones. It's also all caregiver centric, and so the caregiver can help to administer the app. For example, setting up calendar events or managing adding friends and family to the circle so that more and more people can stay connected with the Alzheimer's patient.
Great. So walk me through how it might look like. So let's say it's you and me. I'm the caregiver and you're the patient. How would we use it? Yeah,
so the caregiver first signs up for Timeless, and then invite the patient who, our original idea is that it's on a separate device and the patient has their own, iPad or iPhone, and they can set up Timeless as well. And then the caregiver can then start to add friends and family who can help to contribute photos.
I see. So in this context, I would initiate download Timeless. I would invite you, and then I could share photos with you and help. So what happens after that? So we connect, and then what happens?
Yeah, so we connect, and then we can also then add friends and family, and then those friends and family can then take photos. And for example, if we go out for dinner, I can take photos of the group, and then I can post it onto the Timeless feed as an update. And so then Timeless will then take the photos that I posted and will then tag them. So it'll say, this is Emma, your granddaughter. This is Tanzeem, your friend. And then it'll go through and it will tag those names onto the photo. So when the patient sees it, they can not only see, oh, they went out for dinner, but they can also see, this is Emma and this is Tanzeem.
I see. And so does it ultimately look like a kind of a way of sharing what's going on a distributed kind of network of family members or loved ones and friends, and also help them to jog their memory and remember their identity?
Yes, that's right.
So as you were designing that, how did you come in, figure out what features you would want this app to have, and from how did you kind of combine ideas from someone building a technology to what you know about Alzheimer's and what could help a patient from a caregiver or a clinician perspective, also from the patient's perspective who is using that?
Yeah, so this app really was inspired by my grandmother. I spent a lot of time with her growing up. She would take care of me when my parents went to work and I came off from school. But when I was around 7 or 8 years old, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It became harder for us to have a conversation, for her to ask me about how school was, how my day was. And so I really was taking kind of what I saw my family trying to do to help her cope. We set up a whiteboard in her living room and we write down, her address, her phone number, my dad's phone number, so she remembers. We gave her an iPad that her caregiver can give her to look at, and we sent her photos through there. And then kind of from there, we developed the idea for Timeless. So, I saw, well, what if we could consolidate all these things that we're trying to set up to help my grandmother into one app that we can then, our caregiver can give to her, and she can, look through everything in one place. So, we combine, the photos from her iPad, events on the whiteboard, being able to contact friends and family, without having to remember any phone numbers. That's another feature of Timeless. And combining all those things into one app. And that was kind of the inspiration for the baseline of the features for Timeless. And that's what I based my prototype on. And then, as I started to kind of see Timeless pick up as not only something that could help my family, but also, the millions of families around the world who are dealing with Alzheimer's, I then started to reach out to, medical experts, Alzheimer's specialists, who lived in New York City, who worked in New York City, CTOs, UI, UX designers, and I've been working with, a team of people who have been working with me and helping me to kind of build out Timeless to make sure everything is as intuitive as possible. What's the best way for us to make sure this is as accessible as possible, especially for an Alzheimer's, a senior, audience. And so it really started from, my own experience with my grandmother, but it's really grown from there.
Great. So tell me a little bit about like what Timeless version 1 looked like and what it is now, and how you decided on what features to add or how to evolve that.
Yeah, so for Timeless version 1 was kind of a prototype I built myself, when I was around maybe 13, 14 years old. It's the first app I had ever made, from the ground up. I had just actually taken a class in iOS design and iOS development. And so this is kind of like my first project out of the gate. I started with that. I kind of taught myself how to use some design tools like Sketch and Envision and Flinto, started building from there, and then kind of put together this prototype by myself. And then from there, that's when I started to submit to, competitions and scholarships, and tried to, make the admittedly bold move of, going to some VCs in New York City to try and say, well, hey, I had this idea and I'd love to turn it into, a potential startup, something that can go out into the world and really help people. And it's from there that, as I started working with more people, who were more experienced with technology, who had were designers, I started to kind of flesh out Timeless into what it is now. So today, Timeless is definitely, it has a big emphasis on making sure that it's, visible for seniors, is that it's easy to understand. One thing that really focused on as we were developing Timeless was, we're not just developing for any sort of technology market, we're developing for, the elderly. And so making sure that everything was, a graphical interface, that there's as little text as possible, that, things are, touch friendly, even though it's on a smartphone, making sure those things, those small details were there, was the big focus of getting Timeless from, that prototype I built myself to, what's there on the App Store now.
That's great. So you mentioned that there is face recognition built in. There are all these features. Can you tell me a little bit about just the overall architecture of the app, and what happens when someone is sharing the photo, and a little bit about like behind the scenes? How is the app kind of the overall framework?
Yeah, so the facial recognition side of Timeless is sponsored by and powered by a service by a startup called Kairos. They're based in Miami. And actually, back when I was starting to develop the prototype for Timeless, I was reaching out to CTOs, who I thought could probably be advisors to help me. And the CTO of Kairos was one of them. And he was suggesting, well, we have this, facial recognition API, why don't you kind of tap into that? And they were really, generous enough to sponsor that for Timeless. And so how it works is that when a family or friend sends a photo, and then we send it to Kairos, and it comes back with the name of the person in the photo. And then we use Firebase as the backend. It's Google's kind of database. We use Firebase in the backend, and we save all those photos there. And then it then updates the patient's feed as well, and the patient can see, with the tagged photo, this is a photo, this is the name on the photo, and so that's how kind of the flow works there.
Great. So tell me a little bit about kind of your thinking with now there is with a lot of AI systems, and particularly AI in health, and facial recognitions. There are also concerns about privacy and security of these. Have you, like, in designing the solution, kind of what's your perspective of how images should be used and overall protect people's privacy?
Oh yeah, I mean, privacy has been definitely a big thing that we've been focusing on, which is one of the reasons why I chose to go with Firebase, because of their kind of security and that's built into the database. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely very important that we preserve this information, especially because we're looking at Alzheimer's patients here, and protecting their data has been really important. And so it has definitely been, a big focus with especially looking at the facial recognition side and how that is, it can be used for good, but also can be used for, less good, causes. And so, I've been very much focused on, what is the line between kind of using facial recognition to, to help people, to help Alzheimer's patients recognize family and friends, and kind of being able to tread that line. And I think, ensuring data security of our users has been something that's been really focused on.
So I know that this app has been released more broadly, and you have users across countries. So tell us how the reception's been, and what kind of feedback you've been getting, any surprises, anything that you didn't anticipate, or last minute bug fixes, anything overall.
Yeah, so the reception has been, it's been really great. I mean, we now have over 2,000 downloads from over 30 countries. And I think it is that global aspect of that was really surprising. Even before Timeless launched, I was lucky enough to have the opportunity to go around the world to conferences, from opportunities from, pitch competitions and, programs and stuff like that. And so I think the global reception has been, what surprised me the most, and the fact that translated also into kind of the global aspect of our downloads. It's been great for me to be able to, share my story around the world, to learn from people, from all industries and all, experiences. I think, in terms of kind of feedback that we've been getting, we have definitely been iterating Timeless as it's been released, and we've been getting feedback from users. One thing in particular that comes to mind was that when we had just launched the app, we were noticing that sometimes caregivers would be logging on and signing up, and then patients wouldn't be following. And we realized that sometimes people are using the same device for the caregiver and the patient. The caregiver sets it up and then they gives it to the patient, and then they give it to them every day to look at photos. And so that's one thing that we've been looking at into clarifying that in the sign-up flow, and even thinking about how we can centralize that on the patient instead and not have that caregiver administrative role, or to not built that into one. That's one thing that we're looking into right now. But yeah, I think overall I've been really surprised and really, inspired by kind of the reception we've been getting and the response, especially, how worldwide it is. And so, yeah, I've been really excited with how Timeless is going.
That's great. And I think it's definitely, as people have distributed families, it's a definite important application and an area that we'll see growing. What do you see next? Like even for Timeless and other projects that you're interested in?
Yeah, I mean, for Timeless right now, the focus is getting the app translated, actually. We released a Chinese translation, traditional and simplified Chinese over the late summer. We're now working on Spanish, because we do want to make sure that, that global audience is being served with different languages. But kind of beyond that, I've always had a vision for Timeless also turning into potentially a research platform. We're collecting all this data about, the way that Alzheimer's patients interact with smartphones, interact with photos, in a more digital format. And I really wanted to see how, we could use that to put towards, Alzheimer's research, how we can use technology to serve the elderly, because, one of the reasons why I built Timeless was I realized that the elderly and the seniors are often an underserved market. We can see, the technology industry going and trying to build the next Uber, the next Facebook, the next Apple. But, are we thinking about, who isn't reached by technology right now? Who are the next generations that really need to be served by it? And so I think as technology becomes more prevalent, becomes more ubiquitous, it's important for us to kind of have that research in the back of our heads. How does technology interact, or how do Alzheimer's patients interact with technology, and so forth. And so that's been one kind of vision for Timeless going forward. In general, with kind of computer science, I hope to study computer science in college. I've been really interested in, machine learning and AI in general. I've been doing some projects on my own, kind of researching more of the machine learning itself. I've also been really intrigued by quantum computing, and kind of the opportunities there. And so I'm excited to kind of continue developing my interest in computer science and continue to explore those. Tanzeem, I was looking over, your work with the People-Centered Lab, and I was actually really interested in kind of how you've been working with, technology with behavioral health. What do you find to be like the central idea behind your work?
So I think one of the central idea is that technology, we can't build technology without keeping kind of the user in their mind and what their limitations and needs are, right? So oftentimes in computer science, we want to be generalist, right? We want something that everyone can use. I think that from a fundamental kind of technology building, that's an important goal. But then when we actually want to deploy it, particularly for health, for specific target population, we really need to take into account the limitations and the conditions of that kind of user group. And that's something that's been very, very important in not just how you design the UX design. I think it boils down to fundamentally even in the questions of privacy issues, right? So someone who is elderly living alone might be willing to share much more data so that they can maintain their independence than going to an assisted care facility where they lose a lot more privacy, right? There is this kind of trade-off. Or someone who has serious mental illness, who knows that it's a lifelong condition, right? It's a trade-off between one's own ability to maintain someone's privacy, functioning, quality of life, as well as being able to manage their condition. And particularly, I think that's important in situations like Alzheimer's, oftentimes serious mental illness and chronic illness there is no cure, right? And I think that's been very, very important, and really understanding what are the problems technology needs to solve to help, right? We, as technologists, often focus on accuracy, right? That we want an AI system to give us more and more accuracy. Sometimes, like we've seen that you want to balance accuracy but with usability and a kind of privacy, usability, and exactly what it's going to help them do, right? So it's not just a single metric that you're after. I think as from an algorithm design perspective, really factoring those in, that when you're designing, if you want to optimize an AI algorithm, maybe you don't want to optimize just on accuracy, right? You want to optimize on what's the burden on the user, right? You want to have a sweet spot that minimizes burden and maximizes accuracy. So those are the things that have been very valuable for us to learn by interacting with patients and with clinicians.
The best advice I would give for someone who's just starting out in CS would really to be, dive into, anything that you find interesting, anything that intrigues you. I think sometimes CS can seem like a really big field, and it involves, a lot of, technical stuff, and, coding can seem kind of intimidating at first. But I think, what always drew me to computer science when I was starting out was just the possibilities. Whether, start with, websites or games or animations. I think, there's so many ways that you can approach computer science, not just from, the sciences or math or technology specifically. And so, really just find something that you're really interested in and see if you can view it through the lens of computer science and technology. And, just don't be afraid to, try anything out. I think, it's a field with, again, so many possibilities and so many opportunities to kind of use technology and computer science as a tool for you to view a lot more other things.
So the best advice I can give to those starting to trying out computer science for the first time is try to solve a problem that you care about. There are lots of technology that we use every day. Start with something that you would like to have and delve into it, because that will drive your interest and passion, and you will learn a lot throughout the process. And other thing I would emphasize is computer science is an evolving field, and it changes daily, yearly. Think about computer science as something that you are evolving as well, and don't always be limited by what computer science is today, and really shape it as you go along.
All right, well, thank you so much, Tanzeem.
Thank you, Emma. It was a pleasure talking to you.
So you can find out more about Timeless by following it on Facebook and Twitter, and also visiting its website at timeless.care.